Good Sunday morning, everybody. My name is Jen Youngsun, and I have the honor of serving this congregation as its called and settled minister. Today is the first day of our multi-platform worship, where you have a choice to either come in person or join us online. This technology is brand new to us. Today's the very first day, and so I want to thank all of you for being so patient as we learn and grow together. I really want to thank Jason Bailey back there for coming in as Kat Johnson is still at home recovering from her illness, and so we really appreciate this last-minute help from Jason. You have worked so hard to get to this point. It's been 2 years, right? 2 years of not being able to be here worshiping together. And I got to tell you, this place looks beautiful. Really, I want to thank all of you for all of that hard work. And can I just brag on you all for just a minute? Okay? This church, just in case you hadn't heard, was named 2021's Best Place of Worship by the Registered Guard in their recent Reader's Choice Award. Did you know that? And we are also one of the few Unitarian Universalist congregations that actually grew in the last 2 years. We just certified this congregation at 355 members. So there is much to celebrate and so much to be thankful for. So take off your shoes, for you have entered holy ground. Enter this circle created by love. Come, let us worship together.
The story this morning is an old Islamic wisdom tale. Mullah Nasruddin had been working in the fields all day long. He was tired and sweaty, and his clothes and shoes were covered with mud and stains. Because he had been fasting all day long for Ramadan, he was also quite hungry. But finally it was almost sundown, and Nasruddin knew that he would soon be able to eat. The wealthiest man in town had invited everyone to come and break their fasts at his home that evening with a huge feast. Nasruddin knew that he would be late if he went home to change his clothes before heading into town. So he decided it would be better to arrive on time in dirty clothes rather than to be late. Oh, what a party it would be, what a feast it would be, as he thought on his way to the wealthy man's home. Nasruddin imagined the delicious foods that he would soon be eating: dates, lentils, chickpeas, olives, bread, hummus, falafel, chicken and beef, and best of all, and my personal favorite, baklava. When Nasruddin arrived, the wealthy man opened the door and looked Nasruddin up and down, scornfully, from looking at his worn, ragged clothes and muddy shoes. Without a word of welcome, he gestured Nasruddin to come in and then walked abruptly away. I wonder what that wealthy man was thinking about when he saw Nasruddin in his dirty clothes. Nasruddin joined the throngs of people who were all dressed in their finest clothing. The tables were laden with all sorts of delicious foods: dates, lentils, chickpeas, olives and bread, hummus, falafel, chicken and beef, and best of all, baklava. Despite his efforts to hurry, the seats were all taken, and nobody tried to move over and make a space for Nasruddin. In fact, nobody offered him any food. He had to reach over and around people to get any food at all for his plate, and nobody spoke to him. It was as if he wasn't there at all. The other guests ignored him completely, so completely that Nasruddin could not enjoy any food on his plate, no matter how finely prepared and how tasty it was. In fact, after only a few bites, Nasruddin was so uncomfortable that he decided to leave. So he hurried home and changed into his finest clothing, including his favorite coat. He returned to the feast, and this time he was welcomed with a huge smile. Come in, greeted the host. As Nasruddin entered, people waved and called to him from all corners of the room as they invited him to sit near me and then offered him food. Nasruddin sat down quietly. Picking up a plum fig, he carefully placed it into the coat pocket, saying, "Eat, coat, eat." Next, he took a handful of nuts and put them in, saying, "Eat, coat, eat." Now he began to feed his coat in earnest, grabbing all sorts of food and stuffing them in the pockets. He fed the coat lentils and chickpeas and olives and bread and hummus and, best of all, baklava. Nasruddin became silent as the room became silent, watching his strange behavior. Soon everyone in the room was staring at Nasruddin, wondering what he was doing. The guest hurried over. "Nasruddin, what are you doing? Why are you feeding your coat in this manner?" "Well," replied Nasruddin, "when I first came to this feast in my old farming clothes, I was not welcomed. No one would speak with me. But when I changed into this coat, suddenly I was greeted warmly. So I realized that it was not me that was welcome at the party, it was my coat."
I invite you now into a time of prayer, meditation. As we've been doing all season long, we've been practicing metta, loving kindness. And so make yourself as comfortable as you can be. Settle into yourself. And first, think about yourself. Think about waking up loving kindness for yourself. And say to yourself, "May I be happy. May I be well. May I be at peace." And now think about someone that you are totally in love with. Maybe it's the person sitting next to you, or maybe they're very far away, but they are close in your heart. They are the ones you love the most. Think about them and bring them to your mind. See their faces and say to them, "May you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace." And now widen your circle a little bit and think about someone who is a friend or a neighbor. Maybe that person is here in this church community. Maybe they're healing, recovering. Bring their faces to your mind and say to them, "May you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace." And now, think about someone that you don't know very well. Maybe there's someone in school, someone at work that you just haven't gotten to know, you don't even know their names. Bring them to mind and say to them, may you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace. And now, bring to mind someone that maybe you find to be difficult, or maybe you're having a fight with them now. Your relationship with them is troubled in some way. Bring their face to your mind and say to them, may you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace. Widen the circle even more. Extend loving kindness to all the beings throughout the lands and all the beings throughout the universe. May they be happy. May they be well. May they be at peace. This morning, may we also bring to mind our global neighbors in the Ukraine facing the violence of war. May we think about our neighbors in Portland facing another night of violence as well. May you be happy. May you be well. May you be at peace. Amen. Starting today, and for the next several Sundays, you'll hear from one or two of our UUCE members about what the church means to them. And this is all part of the lead-in to our annual pledge drive that starts on March the 6th. Our church touches each one of us in a variety of ways, and our beloved community is the light of hope as we seek to support one another and the wider world on our journey together. Today, we'll hear from Brian Lewis.
I'm Brian Lewis, and it is my pleasure to offer our stewardship moment, sharing why we support the Unitarian Universalist Church of Eugene. Widening Our Circles is a great title. At least half the time, well before the pandemic, I would regularly watch the service via YouTube, and Zoom helped me to connect even more. We have been in Kalamazoo since August of 2017. My story begins when my sister and I, one Sunday, asked our mom why we attended the Queen of Peace Catholic Church, when she valued a woman's right to choose. 3 weeks later, we were regularly attending the Salem Unitarian Fellowship. Fast forward to my 19th year. UUCE was there for us when she suffered a terrible automobile accident. The church friends and members brought us dinners and stayed in touch with us as Mom was in the hospital for several weeks. From that day forward, I always welcomed the opportunity to offer lasagnas and other help anytime there was a need. It meant so much to me to be supported by the church that I wanted to give back, and it strengthened my commitment to support and be an active member of this community. Since the pandemic, I've been able to have a deeper connection with you. The Coffee, Tea, and Thee Tuesday gathering is open to all. Join us at noon. The virtual social hour after church offers a rich time to keep and make connections. Last spring, I offered workshops on the 8th principle via Zoom, and the Dismantling Racism team presented to the annual meeting the amendment. It was a rich experience to help add the 8th principle to our bylaws and to once again help with the stewardship campaign by making calls. It is such a good feeling to finally gather together at church today, as we are able. The beauty of YouTube and Zoom allows those of us to also be where we are and stay connected, truly widening the circle. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Blessings and in gratitude.
The circle of ecological compassion we feel is enlarged by direct experience of the living world and shrunken by its lack. That quote and the reading that follows comes from Robin Wall Kimmerer's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge, and the Teachings of Plants. Our church Earth Action Group will be leading the congregation in reading Braiding Sweetgrass together in the coming weeks. If you're interested in this project or the activities of the Earth Action Group, please attend their next gathering after church next Sunday, February 27th. Details will also be published in the Weekly Connections email. And now, more from Robin Wall Kimmerer. The Onondaga Nation schools recite the Thanksgiving address, a river of words as old as the people themselves, known in Onondaga language as the words that come before all else. This ancient order of protocol sets gratitude as the highest priority. The gratitude is directed straight to the ones who share their gifts with the world. Here now is an excerpt from the Thanksgiving address. Today we have gathered, and when we look upon the faces around us, we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now, let us bring our minds together as one as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. We are thankful to our Mother, the Earth, for she gives us everything that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk about upon her. It gives us joy that she still continues to care for us, just as she has from the beginning of time. To our Mother, we send thanksgiving, love, and respect. Now our minds are one. We give thanks to all the waters of the world for quenching our thirst, for providing strength and nurturing life for all beings. We know its power in many forms: waterfalls and rain, mists and streams, rivers and oceans, snow and ice. We are grateful that the waters are still here and meeting their responsibility to the rest of creation. Can we agree that water is important to our lives and brings our minds together as one to send greetings and thanks to the water? Now our minds are one. Standing around us, we see all the trees. The earth has many families of trees who each bring their own instructions and uses. Some provide shelter and shade, others fruit and beauty and many useful gifts. The maple is the leader of trees, to recognize its gift of sugar when the people need it most. Many peoples of the world recognize a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree life. Now our minds are one.
We give thanks to the ones who have shared their gifts so that we may have life. To ancestors, to earth, to water, to trees. Now, our mind is one. Mind is so much more than our individual brains, right? Mind is so much more than our cognition, our neurofunctioning. Mind occupies the spiritual realm. Beyond the material, beyond the measurable, beyond the quantifiable realities that dominate our everyday attention, there is mystery, and there is magic, and there is wonder. There is a deep knowing about the interconnectedness and the interbeing of all. Our minds are one. Throughout time and across culture, humans have used the circle to signify this basic truth. Some of the oldest drawings of circles can be found in caves that are 40,000 years old. Ancient humans used to draw concentric circles and spirals on the rocks. And we humans seem to have some sort of innate preference for circular shapes and curvilinear lines, right? So imagine traveling down one of those railway paths, one of those walking paths that they've made from an old train line. It's completely straight, right? And then imagine traveling along a meandering path that curves around and curves this way. It feels different, doesn't it? That preference for circular shapes is apparently very deeply ingrained in us. There's a study done with little babies in 2011 that found that 5-month-old babies, before they're old enough to utter a word or scribble on pages, those infants already show a clear visual preference for contoured, curved lines over straight lines. We have been using circles throughout time to define sacred space, to define and describe the sun and the moon and the heavens. Circles convey spiritual concepts like harmony and unity, wholeness, perfection, holiness. Now, some circles are closed, forming a ring of protection, keeping out negative forces. And some circles are open. Are you all familiar with the Japanese Zen circle? It's called enso. It's often done with a big brush in calligraphy. And so it's one big circle, but it's open at the bottom. The medicine wheel, also called the sacred hoop, is a symbol used by many indigenous tribes in the Americas. Colors like black, white, red, yellow embody the 4 directions and the seasons. Unitarian Universalists also have circles. Last week we told the story of how the flaming chalice became a symbol of the UU faith. Joanna Alexander reminded us that during World War II, the Unitarian Service Committee needed a symbol to stamp all those official documents and papers. And those papers would be used by refugees to escape the Nazis. And so they came up with the flaming chalice. Decades later, the Unitarians and the Universalist denominations came together in the 1961 consolidation, and then we started drawing 2 circles around the flames to protect that flame. Circles also remind us of the inevitable path of life. The Ouroboros. Has anybody ever heard of that? Yeah. The Ouroboros was first mentioned in the 10th century BCE. Now, it may have originated in Egypt or the ancient Greeks, but it has spread to many, many other cultures throughout the world. The Ouroboros depicts a snake eating its own tail in a perfect circle. And that represents the eternal cycle of birth and death and rebirth, the circle of life. It's hard to say circle of life without thinking about Elton John and the Lion King. I'm so thankful that this church has started a Thursday night series about death. It's going on right now, and it's going to continue to the end of March, because so many of us have been so far removed from the truth of the cycle of life and death and the truth that is represented in that Ouroboros. We bury our dead in metal, watertight vaults, right? We practice cremation, leaving us just dusty ashes, all organic materials completely burned away. Both of these modern practices cut the Ouroboros and destroy the circle of life. There was a field scientist working in Africa who was really curious about the fact that he hardly ever saw dead animals out in the wide savanna, and he wondered what happens to these very large animals when they die. Why was it so rare to see them? And one day he was very fortunate to find an elephant who had recently died, and so he kind of hid out and took notes, witnessing what was going on. First, he observed, came the very large scavengers, the jackals, the vultures, the hyenas. And then came the smaller ones after them, and then the insects. All of the excrement left by these scavengers fertilized the soil beneath and around the carcass. And this caused vegetation to grow very, very quickly around and above, over what remained of that elephant. And so instead of this body being lowered into the ground rose over the body in a gentle mound. It only took 2 weeks for the elephant to become completely a part of the landscape. The circle describes our cosmos, gives shape to our yearnings for unity and harmony, and it orders our days. The circle, unlike more stable shapes like a pyramid, a circle moves, right? Consider the wheel of the year. In endless rotation, it describes the way we experience time. So a couple of weeks ago, Sharon and I were hanging out and talking about this service, brainstorming as we do. And she talked about the way that our days and our months and seasons move in this never-ending circular pattern. Our planet rotates on its axis every 24 hours, she said. We call this a day. Our moon rotates on its axis about once every 30 days, and our moon then rotates around the Earth about every 30 days. We call this a month. Each month has one full moon, and if we're lucky, we get 2. And what do we call that second one? Blue moon. Our planet rotates around the sun every 365 days. We call this a year. And our moon rotates around the planet 12 times a year, and thus each year has 12 months or 12 full moons. And considering all of this, Sharon reflected that as modern people, we tend to think about days and months and years just as a way of keeping track of our schedules, right? We have our Google Calendar, or we have the old-fashioned paper planner, and we use that to just keep track of what time is it? What day is it? Where am I supposed to be right now? And then we lose connection to the natural world. These cosmic rotations create our world of day and night. It tells us when we are to rest and when we are to work, when we are to plant and when we are to reap. We have not only lost connection with the natural world, but we have lost connection with each other. For the sake of industrial and technological progress, societies built communities and social structures based on linear shapes, hierarchies, where power could be easily hoarded rather than shared. Today, liberation movements all over the world are urging us to return to the circle. This month, we have been considering the spiritual practice of widening the circle as a way to build community resilience and to face the precariousness of our world with hope and courage. Edwin Markham was a lifelong Universalist whose practice was rather on the mystical side of universalism. You know, I just learned that he was the poet laureate of Oregon in the early 1900s. You may be familiar with these words. It's quite a popular and famous poem that he wrote. He authored these words. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout, but love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. You like that one, Eileen? That's very universalist, isn't it? Yes. Widening the community circle means making space for everyone. It means opening our hearts to a love that is deeper than we ever thought was possible. If we're not mindful, though, it is possible to widen the circle at the edges in a way that keeps the center the same. It is possible to widen the edges where the center doesn't have to change at all. That the status quo can stay put, that the power at the center of the circle can stay. And if that happens, then the wider welcome becomes just window dressing. And I know that we're not interested in just some window dressing, right? Within the Unitarian Universalist movement, there is a call to seek the wisdom of earth-centered traditions in the way we organize ourselves as spiritual communities, as places of transformation. Some people call this dynamic governance, sociocracy. It's a way of being that's based on circles. One of the resources that the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association, is offering, one of those resources is called, an organization called Restore Circles. Restore Circles. And here's a short description from their website. Circles are not artifacts or activities. They are practices of being through which we change institutional and community culture, structures, and ways of relating. We believe it is imperative that the applications of the circle process occurs in the context of communities of learning, communities interested in exercising accountability to those whom they have pledged to serve. So this was just a little tiny sneak peek about circle process. There is so much more that we have to learn about this if we want to move in this direction. And because its roots are in Native American culture, there's a lot of work we have to do first around appropriation and accountability. I believe that every person who rolls through these doors is longing for a certain kind of community and a certain kind of connection. A community, yes, but one that is different from the community that you can find outside this holy space. You know, I've been here for 7, 8 months, something like that, and I've gotten to know this area a little bit, and I have found that Eugene, Springfield, Cottage Grove, Veneta, these are all great communities that support strong connections. You can find excellent community out there with your neighbors, with your coworkers, with your classmates, with the Rotary Club, with hikers, with kayakers. But this place, this community, offers something more. This is a community of practice, what I like to call a living laboratory of love. We are not going to like everyone who is in this community. We are not going to like everything that happens here in the church. Instead, we are called to acknowledge the full humanity of every person we meet. We are called to practice seeing one another, not only with our eyes, but with our minds. Star Hawk. I think some of you may know her. She's an eco-feminist and a spiritual leader for thousands of people. She once wrote that we are all longing to go home. We are all longing to go to some place we have never been before, a place half remembered and half envisioned. We can only catch glimpses of it from time to time. Community. Somewhere there are people with whom we can speak our passions without having the words catch in our throats. Somewhere a circle of hands will open to receive us. Eyes will light up when we enter. Voices will celebrate with us whenever we come into our own power. Community means strength that joins our strength with others to do the work that needs to be done, arms to hold us when we falter, a circle of healing, some place where we can be free. May it be ever so. Amen. Please remain standing for our closing.
As we end our time of worship and thanksgiving, let us say the words of our chalice extinguishing. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
I am so grateful that the COVID numbers are coming down so quickly. But you know what? There is still a risk. And so today I'm asking you to be mindful of crowding as you leave. First of all, I want to give extra time. Let's give extra time to people who need it to exit through whatever door, this one or that one, that they'd like to go out. And then please save your socializing for the parking lot. So that we don't have too much crowding inside this space. I know that this is not the way you're used to doing church, and it feels awkward and weird. But for the sake of showing each other how much we care, let's give each other a little space. And so now, as you leave this sacred circle, open your hearts, open your minds to a greater love. Go in peace, everyone. Go in love.